I selected the osprey as my focal organism, and I chose vocalization as a behavior to document. In the example showing, you can see the female intentionally pushing air out, and her beak is opened, and she is creating sound. Since mated females rely mostly on males for food during incubation and rearing times, I was wondering if this could cause any specific vocal communication from the female to the male. One causal example of this type of vocalization is stated by Clancy, 2005, where a mated female osprey usually makes begging vocalizations when the male is present at or near the nest, often as he is consuming a fish. Here is an example of just such a causal vocalization that I witnessed during my observations. I heard different vocalizations made by the osprey, and this made me wonder if different types of vocalization evolved due to the biotic environment that the osprey was adapting to. Per Britagnoli and Thibault, 1993, the different types of vocalizations made by osprey may have evolved due to the life history traits shown by their semicoloniality, in which mated pairs will somewhat aggregate, likely due to the food resources associated with osprey being specialists that typically only eat fish, along with their biparental care breeding strategy, which I briefly touched on previously, as well as predation risk on eggs and chicks. For these reasons, the need to communicate based on the situation as well as the sender and receiver likely favored adaptations of several types of vocalizations. During my observation, I was wondering if vocalizations change throughout development from hatchling to adult. Per Ellis's 1979 study on golden eagles, vocalizations did change as the chicks aged, starting with chirps at 2 days prior to hatching, which by 10 days the chirps matured into disyllabic tisks, and then later developed into the seer call at around 15 days, and lastly, adding the pissa vocalization at around 25 days, which developed fully into adult-like vocalizations by 53 days. Also, while listening to the chicks, I wondered if the chicks' vocalizations have a specific function that provides current fitness benefits. As stated in Roberts' 1982 study, seer vocalizations given by the chicks seemed to be a solicitation call directed toward an adult so that the adult would feed them or provide them shade. By the adults responding to the chicks' calls, the chicks gain fitness benefits by nourishment and protection from the elements. If this behavior leads to the chick's survival, then it also provides direct fitness benefits to the parents as well. Here the chicks are making begging vocalizations and the female is responding by feeding them. Vocalization is one mechanism used by the osprey for communication. True communication, as defined by Lecture 5, is the transmission of information by a sender that influences the behavior of a receiver and improves the fitness of both parties. I witnessed a few great examples of this type of communication while observing the osprey. One example was when the female or male would vocalize with what seemed like an alarm call or guard call when an intruder was near the nest and the intruder would move away from the nest. Another example was when the female would vocalize to the male in what seemed to be solicitation calls for food when it had been a while since the last fish was brought in, and the male generally followed through with bringing in a fish for her and their offspring. I also witnessed what seemed to be dishonest communication, which was also described in Lecture 5, when the male brought back a fish to the nest and the female was vocalizing in an excited way, and a nearby osprey seemed to be eavesdropping and used the signal as a cue that food was potentially available to steal as the other osprey attempted to intrude on the nest with the fish. Thank you very much for taking this journey with me as we explored osprey vocalization. And a big thank you to the Patuxent River Park Jugs Bay Natural Area. Many of my video clips were from their Patuxent River Park Osprey Nest 1, which is accessible via YouTube.